The break room at Gable Transport always smelled of stale coffee, diesel exhaust, and cheap pine cleaner that burned your throat. It was a scent I had lived with for 15 years, back when Stuart Gable ran the business with a firm handshake and respect for the men who kept his rigs moving. Today, the air in that cramped room felt heavier, almost suffocating. I sat in the back corner, slowly sipping lukewarm black coffee. At 54 years old, you learn that the back of the room is the best place to sit when management calls an unscheduled, mandatory meeting. It allows you to watch the reactions of everyone else before the bosses can read yours. Clint Barlow slid into the plastic chair next to mine. Clint was a former accountant who suffered enough a midlife crisis, walked away from his desk, and started driving big rigs. He kept his logs with the surgical precision of an auditor. He leaned in close and whispered if I had seen the new memo about restructuring. In our line of work, that word never means anyone is getting a bonus. I just nodded, keeping my focus on the small wooden podium at the front of the room. I told him that Julian had been itching to put his mark on this company since his father passed away. Julian Gable was the son, the heir, and the biggest problem this company had ever faced. He burst through the double doors 5 minutes late, flanked by a young human resources representative who looked like she would rather be standing in a rainstorm. Julian was 32, dressed in a suit that cost more than my first truck, and walked with the unearned confidence of a man who had never changed a tire. He clapped his hands together, demanding, "Everyone settle down." The sound was sharp in the quiet room. There were about 20 of us gathered, the core regional fleet, the veteran drivers who moved the high-value freight that kept the doors open. Sean Thorne sat 2 rows in front of me. Sean was a massive man with arms like tree trunks and a temper shorter than a burnt match. I could see the muscles in his neck tightening and turning red already. Julian did not bother with a greeting. He clicked a remote, and a projector screen flickered to life behind him, displaying a chart with a red line pointing downward. He began pacing the stage, declaring that efficiency was down. Overhead was up, and while his father had run the business with his emotions, he intended to run it with his brain. A quiet murmur rippled through the drivers. Old Stuart Gable knew the name of every driver's child and would cover a route himself on a holiday so one of us could stay home with family. Julian probably did not even know how to release the air brakes on a modern tractor. He kept pacing, talking about bleeding money on fuel charges, maintenance, and personnel costs, lingering on those last 2 words. Beside me, Clint adjusted his glasses, his eyes narrowing. He muttered that the chart was completely misleading, pointing out that Julian was mixing capital expenditures with daily operating costs to make the fleet look unprofitable. I asked him why, and Clint replied that it was to justify what he was about to do next. I looked around the room at the familiar faces of my team. Dean Cooper, our head mechanic, was wiping grease from his hands with a dirty shop rag, looking deeply concerned. Cody and Clara Miller, the husband and wife team we all treated like our own kids, were holding hands tightly. They had just closed on their first house based on the steady overtime hours. Stuart had personally guaranteed them. Julian raised his voice, stating that the company needed to be leaner, and that started with understanding what our jobs actually were. He looked out at us with a cold sneer that he thought looked authoritative. He told us that we just drove the trucks, and that was all. The trucks did the work, the logistics software handled the routing, and the contracts earned the money. He smiled a thin, shark-like smile and announced that effective immediately, the company was moving to a flat mileage rate. The new numbers flashed on the screen. It was a 20% cut to our wages across the board. For the regional routes, the tight deadline cargo we handled for their biggest accounts, it was closer to 30%. Sean Thorne stood up so fast his chair screeched loudly against the tile floor. He shouted that Julian could not just slash their rates like that, reminding him that we had written agreements. Julian dismissed him with a casual wave of his hand, saying those agreements were made with the previous owner. He told Sean that we were at-will employees, and if anyone did not like the new rates, they were free to explore the market. I did not stand up, but I spoke in a quiet voice that carried clearly. I asked him if 30 years of accident-free driving, knowing how to navigate a winter blizzard, and the relationships we built with the warehouse managers meant nothing. Julian chuckled, a dry, patronizing sound. He called me by my name, Grant, and said he respected my long tenure, but the job was not what it was 20 years ago. He leaned forward on the podium and said the words that would seal his fate. Drivers were no longer the asset. The trucks were the assets, the contracts were the assets, and we were just steering wheels. We were interchangeable parts, and if one broke, he would simply buy another. That insult hit the room like a physical blow. I saw Clara flinch, and Dean looked down at his oil-stained hands. Julian clapped his hands, telling us the new rates were effective for the current pay period, and that we had to sign the acknowledgement forms on our way out. If we did not sign, don't bother starting your engines on Monday. He turned his back on us, dismissing our livelihoods in 10 minutes. Sean looked ready to charge, but I grabbed his arm. I told him to wait, saying that getting arrested would not help pay his bills. Clara asked me what we were going to do. I told them we would sign the papers to buy ourselves time. I grabbed a pen, signed the form, and knew that I was not signing a contract, but rather a declaration of war. The heavy rain was hammering against the windshield of my big rig, creating a steady, loud drumbeat. It was Friday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after the meeting where we were called steering wheels, and the first direct deposits under the new pay structure had finally posted. I was parked at a muddy rest stop off Interstate 95, waiting for a bad storm to pass. I opened the banking app on my phone and stared at the deposit. I refreshed the screen, hoping it was a mistake, but the number remained exactly the same. My pay was not 20% lower. It was nearly 40% lower. I pulled out my physical logbook. Even with the electronic logging devices mandated by the government, I always kept a paper backup of every single mile. I calculated the distance. I had driven 2,450 miles that week. At the slashed mileage rate, it should have been roughly $1,225, but my deposit was only $150, more than half of that amount. Suddenly, my phone began to buzz. The private group chat we had created, which we named the steering wheels, was going crazy. Sean texted that he was missing $400 from his check. Clara sent a message saying they had docked her and Cody for idle time because they were stuck in traffic on a bridge. Clint called me immediately. He told me he had been analyzing the pay stubs. He explained that Julian had altered the mileage calculations, switching from practical road miles to zip distance, which saved the company money by cutting about 40 miles of payoff every single run. I told him that was blatant wage theft, but Clint said it got even worse. He had just spoken with Dean, our mechanic. Julian had canceled the order for new maintenance parts for the entire fleet. Dean was being forced to use duct tape and salvage parts from a local junkyard to keep the refrigerated units running. I stared out at the rain, thinking about our main contract. The regional logistics manager for our largest account, Mr. Roland Pierce, was incredibly strict about safety. If our trucks started breaking down because the company refused to buy real parts, the drivers would take the blame and our commercial licenses could be ruined. Clint sighed, saying Julian was stripping the company of every asset to get quick cash. I realized Julian did not just want to cut costs. He was desperate. You do not skim pennies from your best drivers unless you are running out of money. I told Clint we needed to meet tonight at Big Ed's Diner, off Route 9, far enough from the terminal that no one would see us. The diner was quiet when we arrived. We took over 3 large booths in the back corner. The waitress, who had poured my coffee for 20 years, saw the expressions on our faces and brought 2 large pots without saying a word. Sean slammed his fist on the table, shouting that he had lost $500, which was his alimony payment. Clara sat quietly, clutching a paper napkin, explaining they were docked for waiting for a mechanic to fix a broken compressor. Dean, looking exhausted, confirmed that Julian had issued a directive banning all new manufacturer parts, forcing him to put bald tires and salvaged brake lines on vehicles carrying high-value freight. Clint pointed to his notebook, stating that even with these extreme pay cuts, the company's financial math did not work. Julian was bleeding cash somewhere else, and the business was hemorrhaging. Sean demanded we all quit and walk out immediately. But I reminded them that if we just walked, we would lose our seniority, our bonuses, and our livelihood. However, if we stayed, We would eventually lose our licenses when the trucks failed inspection, or worse, one of us would lose their life on a mountain pass because of bad brakes. I looked at the 9 drivers around the table. Together, we had over 10 million miles of safe driving. We were the actual muscle of the company. I leaned in and told them we were going to leave, but we were not going to leave empty-handed. We were going to take the cargo contracts with us. Cody asked how 9 drivers in a diner could steal a major shipping contract without trucks or authority. I told them we had the one thing Julian did not have, which was the relationship with the client. I walked outside into the cold rain to make a phone call. I scrolled through my contacts until I found the name Brooke Lawson. 5 years ago, Brooke was a young dispatcher at our company. She had made a routing mistake that cost the business a few $1,000s, and the temporary manager wanted to terminate her employment. I had stepped in, taken the blame for the error, and saved her career because I knew she was a hard worker. She had left 2 years later to start her own logistics brokerage, and she had become one of the most successful brokers in the state. She answered on the second ring, surprised to hear from me. I told her the situation was bad. I explained that Julian had cut our pay by 40%, was falsifying mileage, and was forcing the mechanic to use salvage parts on the trucks carrying their main client's electronics. The typing on her end stopped. She told me that if Julian was using salvage parts, he was in direct breach of the safety compliance clause in the contract. Brooke then revealed the truth. Her sources in finance told her that Julian had leveraged the company's trucks and the terminal to cover massive personal losses in sports betting and cryptocurrency. He did not actually own the fleet. The bank did, and he was one missed payment away from complete liquidation. She explained that if we walked out, Julian would miss his delivery windows. The client would cancel the contract, the bank would call the loan, and his entire empire would collapse. I asked if she could help us set up our own authority and get us a meeting with the client, Mr. Pierce. Brooke laughed and said she had just had lunch with him, and he was already furious that our on-time delivery rate had dropped. She told me that if I could bring her the 9 drivers, she would help us bury Julian Gable. By the time Brooke Lawson walked into the diner, the atmosphere at our tables had shifted from desperate anger to a quiet, electric energy. She looked entirely different from the stressed dispatcher I had helped years ago. She wore a tailored business suit, carried a leather briefcase, and walked with the absolute authority of someone who knew exactly how to navigate the corporate world. She slid into the booth next to me and placed a digital tablet on the table, nodding to the team. She tapped the screen and showed us the digital incorporation papers she had drafted on her drive over. She had named the new entity Summit Route Solutions, structured specifically as an employee-owned cooperative. She explained that every single one of the 9 drivers would own an equal share of the business, meaning we would never have another boss telling us we were replaceable. Clint looked at the screen, pointing out that while incorporation papers were nice, we still did not have any trucks, and we could not move cargo without equipment. Brooke smiled and pulled up another document. She explained that she knew the leasing companies Julian used for his trailers, and she knew the rental agency that provided his overflow tractors. More importantly, she had already used her brokerage's commercial line of credit to reserve 9 late-model Freightliner tractors at a rental facility in Allentown. They were plain white, but they were in perfect mechanical condition and had passed every inspection. Dean asked about the cost, noting that renting a fleet was incredibly expensive. Brooke admitted it was, but she explained that she had already contacted Mr. Roland Pierce's office, informing him of a critical safety compliance issue regarding the Gable fleet. She knew that Mr. Pierce would demand an immediate safety audit of the trucks on Monday morning. When the audit team saw the salvage brake parts and retreaded tires Dean had been forced to install, the client would immediately void the contract for material breach, because the cargo sitting at the port had to move immediately to keep the retail warehouses supplied. Mr. Pierce would not have time to run a lengthy bidding process. He would need an immediate spot carrier who knew the routes and the receiving managers. Brooke looked at us and said that Mr. Pierce did not care about the logo on the side of the truck. He cared about the people behind the wheel. If we showed up in white rental trucks with the manifest in hand, he would trust us over a failing owner with a mountain of debt. Clara whispered that it was a complete mutiny. Brooke corrected her, calling it a strategic acquisition of assets. But she warned us that we had to move quickly. We had to remove all of our personal equipment and gear from the Gable trucks before Monday morning. If Julian found out about our plan, he would immediately lock the yard and hold our tools and personal belongings hostage. I reminded the team that Julian had posted on his social media that he was spending the weekend in Las Vegas, which meant the yard would be empty except for the elderly security guard, Walter. Walter was a good man, but he was easily distracted. I suggested we buy him some donuts and let him watch the football game in the guard shack while we cleared out our cabs. I told Brooke we would agree to the plan on one condition, that we run the company as a true cooperative with equal ownership and equal pay. She tapped the screen showing us that she had already written those exact terms into the cooperative bylaws. I looked around the table, and one by one, Sean, Clint, Dean, Clara, Cody, and the others nodded their agreement. I shook Brooke's hand, and we prepared to execute the plan. On Saturday morning, the sky was a dull gray, but the rain had finally stopped. I drove my pickup truck to the rental yard in Allentown, finding the rest of the team already waiting by the fence. In front of us stood a neat row of 9 clean white Freightliner trucks. They had no fancy decals or corporate logos, just clean white paint that represented a fresh start. We spent the next 2 hours thoroughly inspecting every single truck. Dean checked the fluids, tested the air lines, and measured the brake pads. He announced that the equipment was in pristine condition with 90% brake life and fresh steering tires. To make sure we were fully prepared for the launch, we went through a comprehensive dry run. Dean set up a temporary staging lane, showing everyone how to quickly adjust the fifth wheel and slide the trailer tandem on the rented rigs, which were slightly different from our old Kenworths. Clint laid out the folder of temporary registration cards, insurance binders, and fuel cards that Brooke had organized. Seeing the paperwork neatly stacked alongside the shiny white cabs made us feel like a real company for the first time. We were no longer just a group of disgruntled drivers complaining in a diner. We were business owners preparing to reclaim our careers. Once we were satisfied with the rental trucks, we prepared for the final phase of the weekend. We had to keep complete radio silence. We could not post anything on social media, text the night dispatchers, or mention a word to the junior drivers. If Julian got even a hint of what we were doing, he would call the bank to freeze the accounts or try to lock us out of the terminal. We had to act like everything was normal until the trap was sprung. On Sunday afternoon, Mr. Roland Pierce was at the driving range of the local country club, trying to relieve the stress of managing a failing shipping network. Sarah had arranged the meeting, knowing his weekend routine. We did not have memberships, but Brooke walked past the front desk with a confidence that stopped anyone from questioning her. And I followed along with Clint and Sean. We wore our best clothes, which for us meant clean jeans and ironed shirts. Mr. Pierce was a tall, stern man who looked exhausted. He sliced a golf ball into the netting and let out a loud curse. He wiped sweat from his brow, leaned heavily on his driver, and stared out at the fairway with a look of pure frustration. Brooke stepped forward, calling his name. He turned looking surprised and recognized me immediately. He noted that I had the best on-time delivery record in his region. I introduced him to the team, and Mr. Pierce asked if we were here to negotiate a union contract, stating that he did not employ us directly. Brooke opened her briefcase and handed him a folder containing the photographs Dean had taken in the shop. There were clear pictures of cracked brake drums, rusted airlines, and the official invoices for salvage parts Julian had ordered. Mr. Pierce's face hardened as he flipped through the pages. Brooke explained that Julian had cut the maintenance budget to zero to cover his personal debts and was running dangerous equipment on public highways. Clint added that Julian had leveraged the company's assets, and if the bank foreclosed, Mr. Pierce's high-value cargo would be impounded by a court order. Mr. Pierce rubbed his temples, stating that he had 40 shipping containers sitting at the port that absolutely had to move on Monday morning. He admitted that Gable Transport was violating their safety agreement, but he explained that he could not legally cancel the contract without documented cause. Brooke explained that the cause would occur on Monday morning. Under the contract, if Gable Transport failed to present working equipment to load the cargo at the port by 8 o'clock, they would be in default. She explained that she had already incorporated Summit Route Solutions, a fully insured and compliant carrier staffed by the 9 drivers he trusted. Mr. Pierce looked at the photos of the broken trucks, then at me. He told us that if Gable's trucks were not at the gate by 8, the cargo would be ours. But he warned me that if we missed a single delivery window, he would personally ensure our new company never got another load in the state. I looked him in the eye and promised him we would not miss. A few hours later, the sun had set, and the Gable transport yard was dark. The security guard, Walter, was sitting in his small shack, completely absorbed in a football game. We had bought him some hot food and donuts to enjoy. We parked our personal cars in the employee lot, acting as if we were just preparing for our Monday morning shifts. I walked over to truck unit 404, the rig I had driven for 6 long years. It was filled with my personal belongings. I worked quickly, unscrewing my Custom Citizens band radio, removing the framed photograph of my daughter from the sun visor, and packing my tools and seat cushion into a duffel bag. In 10 minutes, the cab was completely empty, looking cold and generic. I walked toward the main office door, where the heavy metal drop box was located. One by one, the other drivers emerged from the shadows of the yard. Sean carried his heavy gear over his shoulder in a black duffel bag, and Clara had a quiet tear in her eye as she looked back at her truck. She had decorated the dash with little Polaroids of her kids, and leaving it behind was hard. We stood in front of the metal slot. I took my key ring, which had my driver tag attached to it, and dropped it into the slot. The metal clink of the keys hitting the bottom of the box was incredibly loud in the quiet night. One by one, the other 8 drivers dropped their keys into the box. 9 distinct clinks. We had left all 9 resignation letters taped to the key rings, clearly stating that we were resigning due to unsafe working conditions and wage theft. We gathered for a final moment under the dim yellow yard light, looking at the silent line of Gable trucks. These machines had been our homes, our offices, and our sources of pride for years. Letting them go felt like leaving a piece of ourselves behind, but we knew they had become dangerous rolling liabilities under Julian's neglect. Clint double-checked that all driver logs were printed and placed on the dispatch desk to avoid any accusations of incomplete records. Dean made sure the shop doors were locked tight and left his tool chest keys inside the office key drop as well. We walked back to our cars in silence, leaving the Gable fleet sitting like a row of ghosts in the dark. My phone buzzed with an automated dispatch message, assigning me a load at the Newark port for 6 o'clock Monday morning. I did not reply. Julian was still in Las Vegas, completely unaware that his company was now just a collection of empty trucks and keyless ignitions. At 4:30 on Monday morning, the cold air at the Allentown rental lot was filled with the powerful rumble of 9 diesel engines idling in perfect unison. Brooke Lawson walked down the line of white Freightliners, quickly applying the black magnetic signs that read Summit Route Solutions along with our new registration numbers. She handed a clipboard up to my window, containing our official bills of lading and the port entry permits Mr. Pierce had emailed her at midnight. I adjusted my mirrors, checked my air pressure, and spoke into the handheld radio, telling the team to maintain a safe convoy distance and to show the client that the driver, not the truck, was the real asset. As we merged onto Interstate 78, heading toward the port, my dashboard phone began to flash. The automated dispatch system was sending urgent alerts demanding to know why my truck had not left the Gable yard. Then, the night dispatcher texted me, asking if I was sick because the global positioning system showed my truck was still parked. I ignored the messages and kept my eyes on the road. By 7 o'clock, the panic at the Gable office had turned into chaos. Brooke's friend, the receptionist Linda, was texting her updates. Julian had finally woken up in his Las Vegas hotel room to 50 missed calls. He had checked the company tracking portal and saw that not a single rig had moved. He called the yard, and Walter told him that all the trucks were parked, but the drivers had left their keys and resignation letters in the drop box. My phone rang, showing Julian's name on the screen. I let it ring. He sent a text threatening to sue us for damages, but Clint had already confirmed that we had no non-compete agreements. Julian then sent another text, begging us to come back and offering to restore 10% of our pay. He still did not realize that the entire structure had already collapsed. At 7:55, our convoy of 9 white trucks pulled up to Gate 4 at the Newark port. Mr. Pierce was standing by the gatehouse, checking his watch next to the port manager. When he saw our clean trucks arrive in a perfect line, a wide smile spread across his face. The port manager noted that Gable Transport was scheduled for the run, but Mr. Pierce declared them in default, stating they had failed to present equipment by the 8 o'clock deadline. He officially assigned the cargo to Summit Route Solutions. We rolled through the gate, and the massive cranes began loading the shipping containers onto our trailers. As the heavy steel locked into place, I felt a massive sense of relief. We had the contract, we had the cargo, and we were officially running our own business. Later that afternoon, as we were unloading the first shipment at the retail distribution center, a black sedan came speeding into the lot and screeched to a halt near my truck. Julian Gable jumped out of the driver's seat. He looked completely ruined, with his expensive suit wrinkled, his hair messy, and a look of sheer desperation on his face. He ran toward me, shouting my name, begging me to listen. He offered to restore our old pay rates and even give us a 5% raise if we would just sign the cargo manifests. Back over to his company, Sean and Clint walked over, standing beside me. I looked down at Julian from the step of my cab and told him we no longer worked for him. I explained that we were now owners of Summit Route Solutions and we held the exclusive contract. Brooke stepped forward, holding her tablet, and calmly informed Julian that the bank had already been notified of his contract default and was officially filing the paperwork to seize his leased trucks and foreclose on his yard. Julian stared at us, his face pale. Realizing he had lost everything, he begged me to help him, saying his father had built the company. I told him that his father had built a service, but he had treated it like a casino, and we were simply cashing out our chips. I signaled the warehouse security guards, who quickly escorted him off the property. It took exactly 3 weeks for the bank to liquidate the remains of Gable Transport. I did not want to attend the foreclosure auction, but Dean insisted we go to look for spare parts. The yard looked depressing under the gray sky, with the old company sign already torn down. The blue trucks we had driven for years were lined up with yellow auction tags on their windshields. When my old rig, Unit 404, came up for bidding, Brooke raised her paddle and bought it for a fraction of its original value. She winked at me, saying she knew the previous driver had taken excellent care of the engine. We also bought 2 other trailers to expand our new cooperative. The bank lawyers at the site whispered that Julian had taken out massive personal loans against the company's fuel accounts, betting over $2 million on football games in a desperate attempt to cover his debts. He had lost it all and had reportedly fled to Florida to avoid his creditors. As the auction ended, the team gathered around my old truck. The blue paint was a little dusty, but the engine started with a familiar, healthy roar. Clara asked if I was going to drive the new rental truck tomorrow. I smiled, climbed into the cab of my old rig, and told her I was taking my old blue truck home. We were no longer just steering wheels. We were the ones who owned the road.